thank you all for taking time to spend with us this morning. Again, my name's Tim Wright, Chief Strategy Officer here at Enertech, and we're so blessed to actually have Jan Anderson from MrPEX joining us today. And then we'll also get to Justin Job and Jeremy von der Haar after Jan has completed presenting.
Well, good morning, everybody. I hope you can all hear me okay. And like Tim said, I'm Jan Anderson with MrPEX, and we are super excited about the partnership. You know, we've been talking for quite some time, and I feel that the two companies have so much in common, you know, providing a quality product for the ground source heat pumps, now air to water heat pumps and so forth. And of course, the hydronics becoming a bigger part of all of our technical systems out there. You know, with our product that we have now been involved for quite some time, there's a huge, common denominator between the two of us here. So we're super excited to have this. And so let me introduce ourselves. I think it's important to understand that we have been around for quite some time, and we are a complete system supplier for, radiant plumbing, snow melting controls, and so forth. And of course, the PEX-a product, which is the tubing that goes into the system, is our main product that we have built our systems around. So I think that the name MrPEX, a lot of people that are not super familiar with our product and our name wonder a little bit where we come from, who we are, and so forth. So I feel it's very important to talk a little bit about our story, because there's a story behind what we do and kind of where we came from. And we have to talk a little bit about the PEX-a product. And of course, Thomas Lennman, who is the founder of MrPEX Systems, he actually was the gentleman that was charged for Uponor. It's now Uponor, was Worsbo, to actually develop the process of the cross-linked polyethylene that they have. Now, we go back a little bit. In the 60s, there was a gentleman by the name of Thomas Engel that came up with an idea of cross-linking polyethylene. As plastics became more popular in the industry, they needed something that had a little bit higher capacity for temperature and pressure. And so Mr. Engel came up with the idea of cross-linking the polyethylene chemically using peroxides, and he actually ended up selling that right to produce that product to many different companies. Now, only a couple of companies came up with the actual production process of this, and Thomas actually was at Worsbo at the time hired to be the engineer to develop that process, to make sure that it is a production process that they could utilize. So in 1971, that's when he started developing this thing. And he was in charge then of trying to get all the specifications, the standards and listings and everything for the PEX product out in Europe and later down in Australia. And he was quite involved with that whole process. And in those early days, he ended up being the guy that showed up at all these meetings touting the PEX. And of course, he ended up getting the nickname already back then as MrPEX. Oh, there's MrPEX. He's the guy that talks about PEX all the time. So that nickname kind of followed Thomas as he was developing a lot of different products. And now, back in the late 70s and early 80s, Worsbo wanted to come to the United States. And so Thomas then was tasked with coming over here and bringing Worsbo to the United States. And the ASTMs, F876, F877 did not exist. There was no standard for cross-linked polyethylene in the United States at the time. And so he ended up writing the first version of that. And now many iterations later, of course, has been improvements, but he brought Worsbo over here to the United States in 1984. And he ended up building a factory down in Apple Valley and all that stuff. So he has a vast knowledge of what's going on there. Now, he was actually the president of Worsbo up through 1995, and where he ended up moving into being the Uponor global technical advisor for all the different tubing companies that Uponor at the time owned before they divested all those things. And then he was asked to actually move to Europe again. But since he was so established here in the United States with his family, he decided to not do that. And so he jumped off and actually got the opportunity then to help Roth Industries launch their tubing division. So he did that for a few years. But then all of a sudden, his buddy, Lennart Ågren, who had been working at Uponor in Sweden, ended up getting an opportunity to start up a new company in Sweden called LK PEX AB, and they had another version of a PEX-a, which was more of an infrared technology. And that's what Tomas was very excited about. And he ended up getting the rights for North America for that product. And so he basically started his own company. And of course, he wanted to call that MrPEX Systems. And so in 2001, he started that company. So over the years, starting with just tubing and building systems and broadening the offering and so forth. So we can really thank Tomas for a lot of the input and a lot of the efforts, within the PEX industry, for where we're at today. Tomas retired in 2017, and I took over from him at that point in time. And so now it's me basically running the direction of this, and with all the experience. And of course, I've been involved in the industry for quite some time. I, as a matter of fact, got to know Tomas in 1984 when he came over to the United States. I was also from Sweden at the time and moved to the same city and got to know Tomas and so forth. Now, not until a couple of years later did I get involved. And it was in 1988 I got involved with Worsbo, started working at Worsbo, and spent about 7.5 years at the factory. Spent a couple of years as a rep for the tubing. Spent 4 years with Tomas at Roth Industries, where he hired me. We built the Roth Industries offering during the late 90s. And then in 2001, when Tomas started MrPEX, I jumped back to Uponor, and I was the heating product manager for Uponor for quite a few years. And in 2008, I jumped and went to work for Tomas again the third time. So he hired me 3 times. He hasn't fired me yet, which he now can't, which is great. So with my experience in the broad market, I think I have a lot to offer, and we've been building a pretty decent offering with products, where all the dealers and installers, of course, have special needs, for the product. Chad Alsecker also got some great experience within the geothermal industry and the HVAC industry. So we want to, of course, try to bring people in that have some of that experience. He's focused mostly on the heating stuff. And then Grant Dow comes to us from also a lot of years of industry experience on the plumbing side of things. I know you guys are probably not very involved in the plumbing side of it, but he has a vast knowledge of this. And Grant Dow and I worked together at Uponor for a few years, where he was in charge of launching the AquaPEX plumbing system and so forth. And now he's a part of our team. So we're quite excited about that. Jeff Torgerson also comes to us, and he's our inside customer support person. He has a lot of experience with the geothermal industry as well. He has been on the board with the Ground Source Association here in Minnesota, so he has a lot of installation and technical, application experience, which is really exciting to have somebody like that on the team. Doug Mossbrook is now in a new division that we have. We will talk a little bit more about this later on, but with the controls becoming a bigger and bigger aspect of what we need to do out there in the industry, we needed a partner that had a knowledge and the application experience with regards to both the hydronic side and the control side of things. So Doug is available and can tackle any of the control needs that you guys may have, especially when you start getting into the more complex systems, with big McMansions and things like that, which I know some of you are quite involved with. So, and then we have Stacy Zachman, accounting, order entry, customer support, and our warehouse guy, Fred, taking care of all that. So, with that team, it's not a huge team. We're basically have a very precise and focused team for all the needs that we may have. Of course, Enertech has a lot of support. Of course, it's the first line. We are always here also for any questions, technical support, and things like that. All right. So one of the things that I would encourage you guys to go look at is our website. The website has a lot of different things to offer. And of course, between the heating and the plumbing and the snow melt, and now we have added the controls, tab for all these different things that you might be needing to get involved with. We'll talk about the products here in just a few minutes. So, but I would encourage you, MrPEXsystems.com. It's a really good spot to start. And there's literature, installation guides, catalogs, and things like that if you wanted to get involved in looking at that part of it too. So as you can see, we have a lot of different application areas. We go residential through industrial. There's really no project or application that we cannot tackle. So that is really an exciting part of what we have. the tubing can be used for a lot of different things, obviously. So, if we jump into some of the offering, the Radiant, of course, is going to be the most near and dear to you guys. And with that, the tubing is, of course, the main thing that we're dealing with. So the MrPEX barrier tubing, I want to talk a little bit about the PEX in itself, because we find ourselves talking to people about tubing to be used for floor heating and snow melting and whatnot. And there certainly is a specific reason why the cross-linked polyethylene has become very popular. And of course, the PEX-a product. But PEX is the acronym for cross-linked polyethylene. PE is for the polyethylene. The X refers to the molecules of cross-linking. When you cross-link a product, you change the molecular structure completely, enhancing the characteristics of the tubing, and really creates a three-dimensional network. And so if you really look at non-cross-linked product like polyethylene, polybutylene, polypropylene, and things like that, when you extrude that tubing out, those molecular chains will run along the extrusion line of the product. So if you've ever seen a poly line freeze, it typically splits the length of the pipe. That's because those molecules can only take so much stress before they split apart. That's the whole idea behind cross-linking. We allow actually those molecules to link up the other direction as well. And by creating that grid work, or more of a basket weave of molecules, you get a super strong product that can take higher temperatures and higher pressures. Now, not all of the cross-linked polyethylene is the same. We pride ourselves in using PEX-a for the products that we offer. And PEX-a actually is a product that uses a peroxide to cross-link. And this is basically cross-linking at the molten state of the plastic. That allows carbon-to-carbon molecules and atoms to join up together. And that's where you get the thermal memory and the shape memory. So if we ever know a PEX-a product, you could kink it. As long as you do not cut the product itself, you kink it and you can heat it back up with a heat gun. It'll come right back to its original shape. And I think that is a very, very good safety factor to have when you're on a job site. You pull a little too hard around a corner, you might kink the product. You don't have to put a mechanical fitting in there, which is a really, really good thing. The shape memory, which is the cold expansion, which we know the F1960 fitting, which is the expansion fitting, basically uses the characteristic of the product from that shape memory standpoint. You expand the tubing out, and the tubing wants to come back to its original shape. And that is the force that actually puts the tubing around the barb on that fitting to keep it all in place. Now, that is the PEX-a product, and it has a lot of those characteristics right in it. Now, you might find some PEX-b product out there. There are some companies like Zern, Watts, Radiant, and you have Vega, for instance. Those are all PEX-b products. Now, they are better than polyethylene. They are cross-linked, and they have good characteristics with regards to the temperature and pressure requirement from ASTM. However, because of the cross-linked method of PEX-b, they do not get the thermal memory or the shape memory. So you cannot fix a kink with a heat gun and think that that's a repaired spot. It actually weakens the tubing in those cases. And you cannot use the expansion fitting for that product. Now, it is also a little bit of a stiffer product. And so it is a little bit tougher to install and so forth. If you ever compared, PEX-b product and PEX-a products, there's a little bit of a difference there with regards to the stiffness of the product. All right, so keeping that in mind, the third part is the electron beam, the PEX-c, which is not very much offered anymore. We don't see a lot of manufacturers offering this, but essentially it's a polyethylene product that is then run through an E-beam, which means high voltage electricity, that actually joins the molecules and cross-links to a certain degree. It's a fairly expensive process, and so we don't see many people do this. Now, one of the points I do want to talk about with regards to the different PEXs, there is a difference in price many times, and I want to just kind of bring this to the whole system approach a little bit, where if you look at a difference in cost between the PEX-b and the PEX-a, for instance, you might think that, well, boy, PEX-a is quite expensive comparatively. And if you look at 1 foot of pipe, you might have as much as 10, 15, 20% difference in cost. And you might think that, wow, that's a lot of difference in cost. I don't know if I really want to go that much money. However, you're looking at a product that's going to be included in the structure, in concrete, in the structure itself. And if you look at the overall cost difference between the tubing difference in cost and the overall system cost, you're going to find that it's a very, very small percentage of that. Even though the tubing itself might be 15 to 20% difference, how much does the tubing represent of cost of the overall system? You got your pumps, you got your piping, you got your equipment, you have your labor, and all those things are the same. And you look at then the difference of maybe in some cases a few $100 of savings. Are you really going to want to do that? And I know all you guys have already selected, obviously, to be involved with Enertech, which is a nice quality product. So there's no time to skimp on the tubing at the end. So just a little kick from me here on the PEX-a product, where I think it's quite a good thing. The other thing that is important to understand when you're getting into these hydronic systems is the oxygen diffusion. The reason there is a barrier on the tubing, the reason we talk about the oxygen barrier, is the fact that oxygen diffusion could happen. And so this is the last technical thing that I'll go through, but I think it's important for you guys to understand that there is an issue with oxygen diffusion. What is oxygen diffusion? Essentially, when you fill a system up for floor heating or snow melting, it's a closed loop system. That's the same water that circulates through the system the whole time, right? And if you have the first fill of that system, you're going to have some oxygen in that water, dissolved oxygen. This is on the molecular level. This is not air bubbles. And those molecules, air molecules, are going to start to react with ferrous components in the system. So anything that can rust, they're going to start to basically start the rusting process, which if you allow that to happen, you're going to have something called ferrous oxides, which you can see within the first few days of a system. You could have a little grayish coating of the inside of the pipe. And in any closed loop system where there's no additional oxygen entered into the system, that stops and you have a safe system. And with copper pipes or metal pipes, you don't have any issues further because there's no more oxygen getting into the system. However, when you have a plastic pipe, you may think that it's safe, but if there's no oxygen diffusion barrier on the outside of the pipe, something happens when the water that you have inside starts to lose its oxygen. It wants to pull more oxygen in. It actually diffuses oxygen through the wall of the pipe into the water. And if you allow that to happen, it's going to keep this corrosion process going and turn into a bad issue for the system. So when we do closed loop systems, I'll always use the barrier pipe. I know sometimes you can buy a plumbing pipe that does not have a barrier because it's a little bit cheaper, but at the end of the day, you have to look at the non-ferrous components if that is the case. Those are some of the things that you can do to kind of treat this whole thing. But I think at the end of the day, having a barrier pipe is going to save that part of it. So that's the last technical aspect that I want to talk about here before we get into the offering. So thanks for listening a little bit to my rant about these things. Let's move on a little bit to talk about some of the benefits of what we do with our tubing. So of course, the PEX-a product that we offer is an IR method product, and it actually orients the molecules the way we manufacture the tubing in more of a slinky fashion, within the product itself, which actually makes it quite flexible. If you've ever used our product, as compared to some other ones, you're going to find that it's quite easy to work with, and it's, I would say, the most flexible PEX-a product that's out there on the market. And I think the big important part of it is that we are listed, of course. We have all the third-party testing and all the standard grade ratings that you need for the product. So with all those listings, you have a product from us that is able to be used for any application that you have out there. One of the things that we do have is that the 3/8 through the 3/4 inch tubing also has an additional noise reduction barrier on the outside. If you're going through wood structures within a house and so forth, you sometimes can have some expansion and contraction of the tubing, and that could make little ticking noises. And so to eliminate that, we have added a layer of polyethylene on the outside, which is very low friction, and it actually makes the tubing move without actually making a lot of noise. It may not be noise free, but it is a noise reduction, right? So we all have to think about the expansion and contraction dealing with plastic pipes, in those systems. So if you look at some of the things that we have available, anything up to 2 inches is our offering of tubing. As you can see, we have many different sizes of coils, and some people will just like 300s and 1000s from the 1/2 inch tubing, for instance. But for those who have the bigger jobs and want to try to manage the tubing, the waste of tubing more, we do have the 1200s and 1600 footers available. And same thing with 5/8, we've got quite a few different lengths available on that part of it. So these are some of the things that you can look at in our catalog and so forth. So we have a lot to choose from with regards to the coil sizes. So one of the things that is not PEX-a is a PEX-a. What I would say, it's a different pipe, I should say. PEX tubing is something that has been on the market, like High-Tech had it. I know Uponor had an MLC product that they don't offer anymore. We have continued to offer a PEX product, and it is a shrinking market, but it is available through us. It is a ASTM 1281, product, which is the metric tubing that is now an equivalent with an ASTM standard. The good thing about this, the PEX product, is that it actually has an expansion coefficient almost 9 times less than regular PEX. So where we typically see this product be used is either a one-man show wants to lay tubing down and they don't want to try to deal with a slinky situation where the tubing stays. Essentially is an aluminum pipe coated by PEX. So if you want to just do a quick job by yourself, that might be an easier thing to do. Or high temperature. If you're running baseboard, if you're running air handlers and things like that, that's going to be high temperature. You have a lot less expansion contraction. So that's a really good spot, to use that product. You can also make it nice and straight, and it looks a little bit more professional from that standpoint. We do have a few, different coil sizes on that part of it too, and we go up to 1 inch on that part of it. It's only available for heating. It is not available for plumbing. So that is a little bit about the tubing we offer. Parts and accessories. Of course, the main thing that we actually need for our systems is going to be your manifold. The bread and butter product that we offer is a stainless steel manifold. It's an 1.25 inch body, and it is a 2 through 12 pre-assembled application with flow meters going up to 2 gallons per minute. We have on the return side on-off valves that could be taken off and replaced with actuators, for zoning the different loops. These are all EK20 branches. So EK20 meaning it's a 20 millimeter, G3/4 Euroconus connection, which is a very European thing. And you're going to find that everybody has that particular connection on their manifolds. Now, I do want to tell you that if you're going to be using our manifold, use our fittings with the manifold. If you're going to be using somebody else's manifold, use their fittings with their manifold. There are some nuances in the fittings that connect to the manifold that may or may not fit exactly onto the manifold. I know Uponor particularly have a different dimension on some of the inserts for their manifolds. So it's important to kind of keep that in mind. But we can handle anything from 3/8 all the way up to 3/4 on this manifold. You can use either compression or the expansion fittings. I'll show you in a little bit. The great thing is it comes assembled, and you don't need to deal with any European threads whatsoever. We do have a flat gasket connection between the ball valve, the manifold ball valve, and the valve body, or the manifold body itself is a flat gasket connection with the union. So you don't have to deal with any of the European threads, which it really saves you from that part of it. Now, if you move away from a 2 gallon a minute and you need more than that, maybe a longer run, big warehouse, maybe an airplane hangar or something like that, you want to do something bigger, we do have an 1.5 inch stainless steel manifold with inline flow meters, actually taking you all the way up to 8 gallons a minute per loop if you want to do that. Now, this is a really, really great manifold. It's up to 13 loops, and it is quite heavy duty, and it's a fancy manifold, but I love it. It's really works well with these larger snow melts in large, radiant floor heating projects and so forth. So we do support 5/8 and 3/4 inch tubing, for that product. We are offering a 1 inch expansion fitting for this manifold as well, but as we all know, it's tougher to deal with 1 inch tubing versus 3/4 inch tubing as far as just handling it. So most people will go up to 3/4 inch from an installation standpoint, and that usually covers everything. Pressure test kits, of course, every manifold, once you install tubing, connect the tubing to the manifold, you want to pressure test things, make sure nothing happened during installation. So we now have pressure test kits for every manifold application that we offer out there. So that's just something to make sure that you can get from us at the same time. Connecting tubing to the manifold, of course, we have either compression style fittings, and we also have an expansion style fitting, the F1960 cold expansion going right onto the manifold. As you see on the sizes, we do have a 5/16 compression fitting. Now, that is simply because both Viga and Uponor have a 5/16 tubing that they use for their climate panel and quick track. And for those that are dealing with that product, because it is a thinner product and want to use that pipe, they can certainly utilize our manifolds if they want to do that. And we have fittings for that. And again, on the retrofit situation, maybe that's where you need it. So otherwise, one of the things that we have that's unique is a two-piece. The compression ring is actually captured inside the nut, the compression nut. If you look on the upper right-hand picture, you can see that the compression ring is actually inside of the nut and spinning freely by itself in there. So you don't have to worry about loosening the compression ring on the job site when you're out trying to do stuff. So, which is really nice. So all these things are EK20, EK25, for the 3/4 and for the 1-inch G1-inch Euroconus. We also then, of course, have the fittings for the PEX-a PEX tubing, which are quite different with regards to needing some O-rings and other things, but those are available as well. When you're looking at the 1960, which we have found is probably the most prevalent fitting nowadays, people typically have an expansion tool, a Milwaukee or DeWalt or whatever it is. And so, of course, using that in any of the applications is really nice to be able to utilize that. So any kind of transition fittings going up to a manifold or going into a baseboard or something like that, we do offer the expansion fittings for those applications. And typically only the transition fittings are going to be metal. Any directional fittings like 90s and T's and things like that, there's no reason to have a metal fitting there. You can simply have your PPSU plastic, engineered plastic type fitting for that part of it. So we do also offer the crimp style or the 1807, which could take either a crimp ring, a singe ring, or the stainless steel sleeve that we offer. The barb itself on the 1807 fitting is the same for all three of those, applications. So we found ourselves wanting to utilize these a little bit bigger sleeve, the stainless steel sleeve. So we have all those fittings available up to 1 inch if you wanted to use those instead for transitional fittings. Moving into some of the zoning controls, we do offer a 3-wire room thermostat with a floor sensor, and that's just a very simple thermostat available. We do offer a simple zone controller, the very far right there. This is an inexpensive way to place this right by each manifold, and you can hook up your actuators right to that by the zone. You can run basically an 18.4 out to each manifold location, 2 wires for the end switch and 2 wires with 24 volts. So you do need to feed that thing with 24 volts, but it works really, really great, at each location to organize your wiring and so forth for that. We do have the actuators, both 2-wire and 4-wire. You'll find with our wireless system, which I'll show you here in the next slide, we only need 2 wires for the actuators, but we have all available, for you. So that's not an issue. We do have a few zone valves, etc. I know some of you like the TACO zone valves or other zone valves, and that's fine too. We do have the opportunity, of course, to connect any of those 24 volt products to that. So that's basically your simple zoning. Getting into the wireless zoning, which is now an interesting new move that we see in the industry. Wireless was introduced in the early 2000s, and it was not really that great. And people kind of lost confidence a little bit in the wireless zoning controls for hydronics. But it's come back strong in the last few years. And of course, nowadays, when you buy a printer, for instance, you have a wire that thing up. No, you basically just Wi-Fi or wireless connection with everything. So people now understand that wireless is a much more secure environment, of course. So we have gotten involved with a company called Salas, and we have a joint venture with some of the wireless things that they offer. And it is a Zigbee-based product with a gateway that creates a Zigbee network. And because of that, we now have a lot of different wireless components that we can connect through this. We have a MrPEX app for zoning, and this app can actually show you all the different thermostats, all your different smart components, which I'll show you as well. But essentially, we have radiant thermostats with sensors, we have zone controllers, we have pump relays, we have smart relays, we have boiler relays, and all kinds of fun things for that part of it. So not only can you use it for a retrofit application, but you use it for a brand new installation. So, if it works without wires, why run wires? But I know some of you really like to make sure that you have, security and run thermostat wires either way. But anyways, here's an option that you can utilize and take advantage of, which I think is quite exciting. So because of this platform that we have with the wireless, we now then, along with that gateway, can now add on some of the smart components that we have available. So on the same app, we now have an HVAC thermostat that is wired to the equipment, just like any of the Honeywells or whatever stat you're using. However, it is on the same network as your radiant zoning stat. So now on the same application on your app on your phone, you can actually see your HVAC equipment as well, controlled on that part of it. We have remote temperature sensors. We have smart plugs, which also work as repeaters, and door sensors. And I think the one more popular thing that's been coming up lately is the leak detector. So this little puck in the lower left-hand corner actually can be mounted in three different ways, and you can put it underneath dishwashers, down by water heaters, wherever you want to do that, and it's all a wireless connection. You can see it on your app as well. So if it actually detects water, it will give you a warning SMS message, or you can automate actually a functionality which could shut off a valve, which is something that we also have available, shut off valves that could be included with this whole application. So it now opens up your opportunity with some of this stuff to do some fun things with these smart plugs. I have smart plugs all over my house, and I use them for Christmas lights and other lights in the house, and or whatever you want to control, right? So it's kind of a fun platform to utilize. All right, so moving on from the wireless stuff, we do have the Techmar controllers for snowmelt. So if you get into snowmelt control that just needs a simple snowmelt, we do offer Techmar, and we have that available through our offering, which they seem to be the most commonly used snowmelt package controllers. So, there's not a whole lot to add to that, I guess. The one more exciting thing that's we're starting to build out more and more is, of course, the IDC control package. And this actually requires a complete presentation on its own. I'm not going to go through all the details of this particular product, but with all you folks that utilize Techmar and HPX and other things, getting into the larger homes where you have so many different things going on with mechanical, we now have a package that can control all of that, right? So by the time Techmar and HPX no longer can really logically take care of all that stuff, we step in and take the next step up. And it is a kind of an interim step between where you would need to get into a Johnson or Honeywell or Siemens type control packages, which can be very expensive. And so with this, it's a PC-based intelligent control package, essentially, helping you to optimize everything in your package. So it is an open architecture. However, it is an easy programmable setup, and we can certainly take care of all aspects of controlling and of course, programming as well, if you want to, with remote access for energy controls and everything else. So essentially, analog digital input points essentially will be you just plug your equipment and your sensors into our cabinet, and you control it. Now, we do have NOAA weather service feeding into it, so you can take advantage of some reset adjustments based on weather. We do have a cloud monitor. All the different programming is on site where the product is or where the project is. However, we actually have a heartbeat that goes out to the cloud that says, hey, I'm okay. If something happens where you lose a signal, we can always have the dealer or somebody check in and say, hey, is everything okay? So that's something that we can do for that part of it. But it all comes from this cabinet, and this cabinet is kind of the heart of it, right? So all the equipment that you have, but whether it's well, it doesn't matter what equipment you have, pumps and everything else, right? It all plugs into this cabinet, and based on the cabinet being plugged in with all the equipment, we then have a secret sauce, which is a software-based control package. So that's something we could talk about. If it's of interest to you, certainly get a hold of us. We can talk more about it, but it is something that is available out there. I mentioned to you Doug Mossberg as our controls guy. He does a lot of this control. So he builds the cabinets, he programs everything and so forth. One of the things that he also does is to actually get into hydronic panels, frame sets, and all kinds of different things where you can actually say, hey, I got this huge house. We got all these things going on. We got a ground source heat pump. We got all this stuff. Can you build us this package? And as we know, sometimes on these big jobs, there might not be a lot of room, first of all, to build things on site. And also building it in a controlled environment might be something that is important. You place this thing in the middle and you plug in your connections out, connections in, and you can integrate the controls and everything with it if you choose to do so. So anyways, want to give you an opportunity to understand that that's a capability that we have. So again, if you have a need for something like that, certainly get a hold of us and we can certainly help you look through and see what that might look like. So moving into a little bit more simpler stuff, of course, heat transfer is going to be an important part. We want to make sure that we can work with any structure. The duo track aluminum panel is something that we find pretty unique to us. We have the patent on this, and it's 3/8 or 1/2 inch tubing. So one skew, if you want to use 3/8 or if you want to use 1/2 inch. The output of 3/8 is no less necessarily than 1/2 inch. However, you have to run shorter loops because of that pressure drop that you have through 3/8 versus 1/2 inch. We also have the Omega heat transfer plates for those who decide to go on top of the floor or to want to do a radiant sealing of sorts. That certainly can be done as well. Here's just a quick way to show you kind of how it is applied in between the joists, up underneath the joist cavity with insulation right behind it. Working overhead, of course, putting all that stuff in there. When it comes to retrofitting products, we have something that we call a retro panel. And this is probably the most logical on concrete retrofit product that I've seen out there in the market. And, I've been around for quite some time also. This actually is a panel, 31.5 by 15, and it actually has a little bit of insulation on the backside, which is more or less a thermal break. It has galvanized steel on the top side with 8 inches on center for 1/2 inch tubing that snaps right into it. So between the turnaround panel and the straight panel, you build your pattern with full panels. You don't really have to cut anything. Cover as much as you can of each room, and basically then cover the tubing, pressure test it, make sure everything is good, and then cover the outside edges with treated plywood. And it's a really interesting product, and it is only 3/4 of an inch finished product. So you put pad carpet, linoleum floors, or any kind of floating engineered floor on top of it. Tiling is a little bit more tricky because you do have to fasten the whole assembly down to be able to do that effectively, and that has a little bit of more complication. But for the most part, any other application on top is working fine. So when you're looking at it, by the time you put those covers on top of the pipe, it's this nice smooth surface that actually allows you to distribute the heat very quickly. And it is a very quick responding system as well. Just as an example, this is a basement of somebody that I actually know, and I wanted to try it out. This is before I even took this product on. I wanted to make sure that it actually went in, and so we did the basement, and you can see that the picture on the left is before. We covered everything up, but basically laid the tubing down, and then on the right side, you can see we put the treated plywood on the right side, on the around the outside edges, and then covered up the tubing and put the plates down, and you have 3/4 of an inch of pad carpet, and it works wonderful. So that's a really cool product to look at for retrofitting and so forth. Another one on top of wood floors, the heat ply product is essentially 5/8 of an inch thick and takes the 3/8 tubing at 6 inches off center. Because the tubing is 6 inches off center, the straight runs actually have little routed grooves in them to help spread the heat a little bit in between. I know tubing or heat wood is not a good heat transfer media to begin with in one sense. However, because the tubing is so close together and we have those little air channels in between, you have a very, very even surface, and you don't have to deal with the aluminum at all on this particular application. But as you can see, you can make between the straights and the turnarounds and so forth, make a very nice looking job. And if you have wood floors to be nailed down, this is a good option to use for suspended floors for sure. Retrofitting this product onto a concrete floor doesn't work as well because you would have to put down 5/8 treated plywood first, and then you would have to put this down on top of it. So you're raising the floor quite a bit, which is typically going to be the biggest challenge within a retrofit in the basement, for instance, or existing concrete. You're dealing with height issues. And so the thinner you can keep that, the better you're off. So, all right. So now we have the tubing connected to manifolds locations. Then we have a surface mounted cabinet. As you can see, it's knocked down. We used to have pre-made finished products. We found that shipping them around was not very good because they got damaged a lot in freight. So we decided to go with a knockdown version, which is really, really great, easy to install or to assemble. So we have the surface mounted one, or we have the recess mounted version of that, which they work really nice for keeping a professional looking, project. When it comes to tubing fasteners and organizers, we have all the manual tools, if you will, to fasten a tubing. We are not involved with any of the electronic tools, like pneumatic guns or anything like that. Most people have those already have a relationship with a manufacturer of tools. So we typically go just with our manual tools. And then what you're going to be using the most of, I believe, is your tacker tool, which is your foam staples to staple tubing right to the foam, which is the most common way to do it. Other things we have available, quick clips for mesh. We have plastic bend supports, metal bend supports, or the more conduit bends for concrete applications. We also do have the octa rail, which comes in about 3-foot sections that you can snap together, that you can, anything from 3/8 to 3/4 for that part of it. This is really nice to use where you don't have, well, it's a choice. I guess some people like this better than stapling the tubing down because you can keep the spacing nice and good looking, I guess, at that point. Uncoilers, fully adjustable. This is a very heavy duty uncoiler, but it does collapse down into a nice compact piece. And, in the back of the truck, it's usually a lot of stuff going on, right? So putting the uncoiler, folding it up and so forth makes a lot of sense, and it doesn't take up a ton of room. We do have cutters. We have some reamers for the PEX-a PEX, strap-on thermostats. And I think one of the last things that we can talk about here that we have available is, of course, design software. We do have our own LoopCAD program with all of our parts and pieces and applications for the suspended floors, the retro panels and everything else. We certainly can help do some of this stuff. I know Enertech has the capability of helping for design as well. So anything we can do to help that whole application, and installation and whatnot, design of projects, we certainly be happy to do so. So I think trying to keep this on time and not go too long. I'm pretty much done with this part of it. And I think if there are any questions towards the end, I will stay on, and Carly can certainly voice any of the questions out there, and I'll certainly try to answer those if they come up. But I do appreciate the opportunity, and I really, really appreciate Enertech partnership with us. So thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, Jan, thank you very much for taking time to join us. I've been able to see you this whole time. Just unfortunately, my cell coverage is not that good today. Hopefully everybody can still hear me, but great to see you. Thank you very, very much for sharing with us today. And what we have valued and appreciated, Jan, if you couldn't hear me when I tried to kick this off the first time, is just the partnership. Truly finding the partner within the hydronic solution that we've been looking for years. So thank you for your persistence. Thank you so much for joining alongside of the Enertech team. We greatly appreciate you and value you and your team and your culture. It so matches up beautifully with Enertech and who we strive to be every day. So again, Jan, thank you for taking time to share about your company and your products. And we know that there will be great success. There will be great results coming from this new partnership. So moving on, if I may, to our newest addition to our Hydronics family, we've got Jeremy Vonderhaar, our product manager, and we also have Justin Job, our sales and field applications engineer, and they're up next to spend time talking about what's new at Enertech. And we're very excited about this product, just as we were about a year and a half ago on our DX that was manufactured by Enertech as well. And that has been a huge success. So guys, take it away. We know this one is going to be equally as successful. Thank you again, Jan. Thank you, Jeremy and Justin.
Thanks. We have the Enertech air handler known as the EAH, as well as the Enertech case coil. This will be known as the EEH. Warranty, you'll be working with a 3-year parts only warranty and a 90-day out-of-box assurance. And on the commercial side, it will be a 1-year parts only warranty. For the unit dimensions and weight, to quickly run through these, the EAH 024 comes in at 47 inches in height, 1.5 in width, and 21.5 inches in depth. And for the 3 and 4 ton, they share the same cabinet. Both of those clock in at 190 pounds. And for the 5 ton, that also comes in just a hair under 54 inches, but now we jump up to 25 inches in width, same depth, but 210 pounds. And as you can see, we've got the EAH dimensions up there as well, but for the sake of time, I won't run through those. Just to quickly run through the nomenclature on these units, we've got that up on the board there. So for the EAH, again, you've got the option of picking a 2, 3, 4, 5 ton model. And the only real choice that you have to make there is voltage. You can have a 1 or 208, 230 volt single phase, or you can pick a 0 or 208, 230 volt single phase on the commercial side of it. EEH is very similar, same models available there. But now instead of picking the voltage, you're selecting either a 1 for a residential warranty or a 0 for a commercial warranty. And with that, I'll go ahead and round off and pass it over to Justin to give us some features and benefits on it.
So going into the features and benefits on our new Hydronic air handler, this is a multi-position air handler. It can be configured for it. It ships in the upflow configuration, but can be configured for downflow or horizontal left or right options. This is made with 18 gauge galvanized pre-painted steel. It's an extremely durable cabinet, as well as ships with extremely high quality fasteners. I know there are some other products out there that have some issues in those areas. We also seal up all of the fastener holes with rubber-backed washers, so we don't have a lot of air leakage on this cabinet. We have front-facing water connections. These are copper connections, ranging from 3/4 up to 1 1/8 OD or 1-inch pipe. Front-facing condensate drain on both the primary and secondary. And of course, you can configure this for vertical or horizontal applications. So this will work well in an attic setting or in a crawl space. So this unit does come apart in 2 sections. It is a modular 2-piece cabinet design. And this makes it a lot easier to get up into an attic location or in a crawl space. Also, just, cutting the weight in half, as Jeremy alluded to earlier. For the larger models, we are talking, close to 200 pound ship weight. So I think we're around like 170 or something after you get it uncrated. But either way, breaking it apart into 2 pieces is a lot easier on the job site. It does come apart very easily with just a couple of screw removals there to pop the 2 pieces apart. So, narrow spaces and tight applications are just made easier with this type of configuration. Again, it is 18 gauge steel. So even though this does come apart in 2 pieces, it is an extremely robust cabinet. So line voltage and field wiring, everything happens up in the top. The way the air handler ships to you, like I said before, it is in a vertical upflow configuration. But everything that you really care about as far as a high voltage and low voltage wiring is up in the top of the cabinet in its own space inside the air handler. There are knockouts on both left and right sides, and we have the line voltage field wiring. It does come with our standard 75 VA transformer with a resettable circuit breaker. So we have plenty of 24 volts available for outside the box zoning or any type of zone controls. in most applications, there will be no reason to add another transformer. And then we certainly have the option to add a field installed electric heater, which the air handler is made to accept. So it's a very easy install. Depending on the size of air handler, those are available in either 5, 10, or 15 kW options. And this is on the left side of that control panel. And then on the right side of the control panel, we have the low voltage wiring connections. This runs the same ECM board as all of our new packaged systems. So we have a lot of continuity between the parts availability. We do have the same field wiring connections that you guys are used to with our equipment. They are a removable plug with screw terminals. And then we have on that ECM board this similar dip switch configuration where you can adjust blower speeds. This unit does offer essentially a 3 heat, 2 cool fan control situation. So we do have lots of blower speeds available with onboard dehumidification controls. And this is, a really nice field wiring setup as far as I'm concerned, makes things, really easy and carries over the same type of wiring strategy that our packaged units have. Auxiliary heaters have a single point connection for the 5 and 10 kW variations. For the 15 kW for the 060 or 5-ton air handler, that does come with a single point connection with jumper bars pre-installed, but you could split that up and power those off 2 different line voltage connections. Like I said before, the thermostat connection is a detachable plug, and we're running the same board, so we have really good parts continuity. And it is a snap lock controls mount, so boards are very easy to replace if that were ever to happen, if a board got damaged. But it's a very clean and simple wiring strategy on the high voltage and low voltage connections, and just overall a really, really nice package that allows you to run your wiring in from both sides. So when it comes to the blower section, we have a variable speed ECM blower. It is a constant torque motor. The Easy Glide track allows you really simple installation and removal of this blower wheel, or the whole blower assembly. So everything is made to be easily serviceable and configurable for whatever type of configuration you want to put this air handler in. The whole entire cabinet has the same closed cell foam insulation that you see inside of our packaged Geo units and our water-to-water units. So we have a really tight cabinet that not only from a sound perspective, but also an air leakage standpoint, this is a really, really nice quality cabinet, and, doesn't require a lot of trying to seal this thing up on site. I know that's a problem with some others that are on the market. And, the sound level of this, as well as indoor air quality, is improved by this closed cell foam insulation. So with the A-Coil, just like on our DX model, we went to an all aluminum. On the DX model, it happens to be a microchannel coil. This is not a microchannel. It is a tube and fin design, but it is an all aluminum A-Coil. We do have, like I said before, copper connection. So we take care of that aluminum to copper joint. So it's much easier to install in the field. But because of this all aluminum A-Coil, we have longer coil life expectancy, as well as increased thermal transfer. The coil, just like the blower, is incredibly simple to slide out the front of the cabinet and flip it over for different horizontal or downflow applications. The IOM manual is inside is available now on enertechusa.com, and you can see all the instructions in there on how you can pull the A-Coil and blower out to flip it over and change it up for configurations. Again, just like the blower housing, the bottom section in this configuration with the A-Coil is aligned with the closed cell foam, and just makes for a really nice overall package. The auxiliary heaters come as kits that are really made to fit right into the hole in the top of this air handler. So it's a really simple install. You just have to remove that front cover, slide it in, install a couple of screws, and then you'll be able to hook up the high voltage connections. And they, like I said, there is a 5, 10, and 15 kW option. The 5 being for the 2-ton model, the 10 kW for the 3 and 4 ton variants, and then the 15 for the 5 ton. We do have different filter rack options available, as well as filter base, or a base for the air handler to sit on.
So to get into the timeline, price list, and literature for these, so I think one of the biggest questions for today will be, when are these available to order? So starting on July 1st, you will be able to start placing order for these. Price list, some of you may have seen an announcement from us a couple weeks ago that our July 1st price lists were available. We actually just put out updated versions of these as of yesterday evening. So if you get into those now, you will be able to find the Hydronic air handlers underneath the water-to-water equipment within the price list, as well as the pricing and some additional warranty options there. Looking at technical literature, as Justin alluded to earlier, we do have an IOM for the air handlers and case coils available on all of the branded websites, as well as the Enertech support site, as well as an EDSM for both models of this as well. Probably the quickest way to find it, if you go into the Enertech support site, go to technical documents, just do a quick search for either EAH or EEH. They should pull right up for you. And lastly, looking at the marketing literature here, we do have an updated air handler brochure available for these now. You may have seen this previously, which is the DX version. We do have the Hydronic models included within that now. And we will have a dedicated web page that should be up if you go over to enertechusa.com and navigate over to the air handler section. You'll be able to check that out. So with that, I will pass it back on over to Carly, who I believe has a video for us to play.
Hello, my name is Justin Job with Enertech Global, and today I'm excited to announce the release of our new Hydronic air handler. This unit's going to be available in 4 different sizes. We have 2-ton, 3-ton, 4-ton, and 5-ton options available. This is a multi-position air handler. In its current format, sitting next to me, it is in the upflow position. However, it is easily converted to a downflow, as well as a right or a left horizontal option. This unit is made with 18 gauge pre-painted sheet metal. It is made in our factory in Mitchell, South Dakota, and it has some features like an all aluminum A-coil, as well as sweat copper connections to make it easy to install. It also offers an ECM blower motor, the same motor that's available in a lot of our packaged equipment for a given size. This unit features a lot of the same electronics that is available in many of our other packaged pieces of equipment. This helps with consistency as well as part availability. This unit also features an easy to install auxiliary heating option, and those options are available in 5 kilowatt, 10 kilowatt, as well as 15 for a given size of air handler. So we broke the air handler apart into 2 sections, and you can see this makes it much easier to get into tight spaces such as crawl spaces and attics. If you would like to put this into a downflow situation, you can slide the coil out, flip the case upside down, slide it back in, at which time you flip the blower assembly upside down and this sets on top. All those instructions are in the install operation manual. If you'd like further details, you can see that manual. You can see here the all aluminum A-coil. And like I said, this is a 2-pipe A-coil, and it is meant for low temperature heating as well as cooling operation. The ECM blower motor that's in the top section over here, it is a constant CFM blower motor, and we do have some fan speed options available for you. And we'll take a closer look at some of these components. So on the blower section of the air handler, we have our field wiring connection board up here. This is where you're going to land your thermostat wires. These plugs are removable. They are color-coded as well as labeled with the correct letters for standard heat pump operation. This is very similar to the rest of our equipment, so anyone that's familiar with Enertech packaged heat pumps, you will be familiar with these type of connections. Behind that, we have the ECM board. This board does house the row of dip switches to make adjustments to the blower and adjust CFM settings. Behind that, we have a 75 VA transformer with the resettable circuit breaker. That transformer has enough power to handle even pretty extensive zone systems. In the center of the top compartment here, we have a block-off plate that you would remove to install the auxiliary heater. This is a 2-ton size air handler here, so it only has space for the 5 kW auxiliary heater. The larger models will have more space up here. It is a drop-in install for the auxiliary heater, and it comes pre-wired with the high voltage plug to plug into that auxiliary heater. We have one place to land the high voltage wiring coming into this unit, and these units do only come in 240 volt configuration. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this walk around and quick look at Enertech's new hydronic air handler. If you'd like more detailed information, dimensions, weights, visit our website at enertechusa.com and look for the installation and operation manual.
We will go ahead and get into questions now. Okay, so looking at the first question, are there different configurations, horizontal versus vertical, field adjustable or not?
Yes, this is Kip here. They are field adjustable, so vertical downflow, horizontal flow. And so at this point, it can be field adjustable on the job site. And the instructions are in the manual. So left hand or right hand airflow, easily modifiable.
Okay, thank you, Kip. The next question, do we need to be concerned about fluid quality with regard to the aluminum coil?
At this point, I'm going to say that we need to follow our typical recommendations. If we're going to have the antifreeze in it, we want to make sure and have the appropriate amount of inhibitors. I'm going to recommend that we have antifreeze.
The aluminum coil is not the most sensitive component in the system, but for other reasons, you would definitely want to have good water quality. Certainly are concerned with having good water quality in the system, although the aluminum is fairly robust in this sense.
Okay, so the next question is, what is the tubing inside the water coil?
It is going to be aluminum tubing.
Perfect, thank you, Kip. The next question is, when are the AH able to ship?
You'll be able to start placing orders on July 1st for these, and then they will follow the standard unit lead time from there. So whatever the current unit lead time on the place the order is will be the when they're shipped.
Okay, and then one of the last questions we have is, can you power the unit with the backup heater circuit, or do you need 2 separate feeds like the EAD air handler?
We need to power it with 2 separate power supplies. Justin, would you have anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I mean, that's the best way to handle that situation. It depends a little bit, I guess, on which auxiliary heater you're using. But technically, best practices would be to power it with 2 individual power supplies.
Is a strip heat installed internally or externally on the air handler?
It's installed internally, so it goes inside the cabinet and footprint of the air handler.
Okay, and then just going over this again, can you please share the lead times on the air handlers?
Jeremy, if you don't mind, this is Tim. I'm going to chime in on this one only because I was speaking with Dan Jackson, our chief operating officer, yesterday, who's overproduction, over engineering. And Dan truly believes, as Jeremy said, the standard answer is what he stated, and that's our standard lead time. However, we may be able to get a jump start on these now that components are starting to come in much nicer than they have been over the past 2 or 3 years. So we may have a different lead time for the EAHs. And I would just check with customer service. They are the ones that are in touch with the factory. So it could be shorter than our standard lead time for compressor bearing equipment, but please just check with Denise and our incredible customer service team, and they'll make sure they give you the right answer. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Jeremy. So right now, those are the last of the questions. Like I said, if you guys have any other questions that were not answered during this webinar, please feel free to shoot us an email. You can send it to marketing@enertechusa.com or send it to one of the tech service guys. We would be more than happy to get those questions answered. We just want to give a thank you to everyone who joined us, and we will be sending out a follow-up email with the webinar, the recording, the video, and some of the questions too. Thanks for joining, and have a good day, everyone.